Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I want to talk about my biggest pain point currently in the First Descendant, a brand new looter shooter that overall I've been very much enjoying, aside from this one thing. And no, it is not monetization. I understand why people are frustrated with the prices of items in the game and how it seemingly pushes you towards making purchases with real money. However, it does feel like everything pretty much is grindable in the game if you so choose. So if you decide to ignore the shop, it does feel like you can continue on and have a ton of things to chase without having to spend any real money unless you want to. And again, it's a free to play game, so as long as there is a path forwards towards earning stuff, I don't mind the way they monetized it. Although, again, I understand why people might be frustrated. Instead, my biggest issue currently is the scaling with co-op and multiplayer. And my reasoning for that is it feels like playing with a random group is near impossible once you get later on in the game. So early on, when you are going through the campaign and all the various missions, that's the gameplay you'll see. Running co-op is very simple, very easy, and something that I think works out very, very well. You can level up your alternate characters fast and all that kind of good stuff. But once you get past the campaign into hard mode, it feels near impossible to run with a random group, and overall you're better off running the hard mode bosses, the void intercept battles, the hard mode dungeons, all of that solo, which is counterintuitive for me personally with a game of this nature. I understand there should be the option to run things solo, but it is also nice to have options to run with other people. And if everyone doesn't have a very on point build for some of the different content, you can leave people behind very, very quickly. And it does feel like it's very difficult to even carry your players on your team who might be a little bit underwhelming with their builds. And so I've seen it in other looter shooters. You have games like Destiny where you can essentially make up for the fact that other players might not have perfect builds. Whereas in this game, it doesn't feel like that is nearly as easy to do, especially if you get 3 other players on your team, all of whom are tackling a hard boss for the very first time, and it does lead to a lot of wipes, unfortunately. And that's something that I don't know how they fix it. I understand they want to make the game difficult. You can't make it so that way teams are breezing through this content, but I also feel like in a looter shooter or MMO, one of the best aspects of the game is the socialization, is the ability to play with friends, both new and old. And not being able to matchmake with randoms in content like this makes it very difficult to meet new friends, to add players who you want to play with again in the future, and that can be very, very frustrating for me. It does feel a lot more like Borderlands in that instance, where Borderlands farming often feels better off if you are just essentially playing solo all the time. And that's kind of the vibes I'm getting from the First Descendant, whereas I wish it would be a little bit more balanced so that way it's the same difficulty for hard mode content with either solo play or with a group. And that right now doesn't feel very balanced. It does feel like if you are with a team, you are going to have a much more difficult time, and that seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally with the design of a game of this nature. And it's something that I hope gets rectified in the future. I do want to play this game in a group as much as possible. Yes, I understand that ultimately everyone will eventually get their builds up to a level that it should make the co-op missions a bit easier. We are still very early on in the game. This is just a criticism or critique that I personally have because I do want to play this game more often with friends, and I want it not only to be fun but also viable whether you are playing solo or whether you are playing in a group. And that's not an easy thing to do. I'm not going to say that balancing for solo to multiplayer issues is easy. We saw games like Helldivers have an issue with this where it was easier solo at times than it was with a group, and then they eventually made it harder to play solo, and that tipped the scales to a degree where solo players were just not having a good time. So ultimately, I know this is a tricky balance to find, but I do want it to be able to be a game where I can comfortably play with my teammates, with other players, and we can test out new builds and try things and not feel like we are hampering the team because I can run the same build solo or with a group, but with a group I'm not contributing as much because of how much more difficult the content ultimately is. And again, maybe I'm in the minority with this. I do feel like it is something that a lot of people are saying, that the best way to take on these hard mode void intercept battles, the hard mode missions, is to do so as a solo player. And because of that, I think it's going to discourage players from joining up with other players, from matchmaking, and then that's going to even decrease the amount of players who are matchmaking as well. And ultimately, this game is going to shine if you have the option to play with not only other people, but also in smaller groups as well, if you so choose. So ultimately, that's a gripe that I have that I hope is corrected. Again, this feels like something that the developers have continuously listened to feedback from the community, and I don't know, again, if I'm in the minority with this. Maybe most players would prefer to play solo, and if that's the case, that's perfectly fine. Not everyone, though, is going to have a pre-made team, and certain characters are not going to do as well in solo instances as well, and that's another frustration. There are some more team-oriented characters that I feel like can't shine nearly as well because the solo play is just so prevalent, and some characters are just going to do so much better when you are running by yourself. So hopefully this is something that I guess generates a conversation, because personally I hope that this is a conversation that leads to some improvement in this way, whether that is a better way to matchmake or matchmake with characters and players who are more in line with your level, your skill level, or anything like that. I don't know how that's possible, or if it leads to them balancing better between solo and then group play. So let me know in the comments what you guys think down below. Let me know also if you want to see more First Descendant content from me going forward. I've been really enjoying the game otherwise. I hope that this is something that gets adjusted in the future. But anyway, even if not, I'll continue to play and enjoy the game ultimately. My name is JoPa. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you all later.